I worked hard to earn money to support my fiancé's studies for many years, but he used my money to please female classmates and even asked me to pay for him at a state-owned restaurant, pretending I was his cousin. After I paid, he coaxed me. Diana is the daughter of the county magistrate. If you have a good relationship with her, you'll have more options in the future. When I become rich, won't your good days come? At that time, I had deep feelings for him and believed his lies. Later, when I was working, a machine in the factory cut the artery in my hand, causing excessive blood loss and death. My fiancé used my compensation to propose marriage to Diana's family. They became newlyweds and lived in harmony, but I was still alive and watched them enter the bridal chamber. When I opened my eyes again, I looked at my fiancé, the one who made me pay, and he turned around and left. In this life, I only love myself. You came at the right time. Do you have any money? Give me some quickly. My fiancé Brian was standing in the hotel corridor. When he saw me, his eyes lit up instantly, and he walked toward me with a smile. I had just recovered from suffocation and took a few steps back in fear. "What's wrong with you?" he asked with fake concern, but I was so heartbroken I wanted to slap him. In my previous life, I carried more than 10 kilograms of fish and walked for an hour on the mountain road to a restaurant in the city, just to earn a few more cents to support Brian, but I ran into him entertaining classmates in that very restaurant. I was hungry and exhausted, but he didn't care. He took all my money to pay the bill and didn't even leave me money for a meal. I was a bit angry, so he coaxed me again. Diana is the daughter of the county magistrate. If you have a good relationship with her, you'll have more options in the future. When I become rich, won't your good days come? He always said that when he became a college student, he would take me to the city for a better life. I believed his promises. After paying, he led me to the private room. There wasn't even any food left in a table full of ridicule. "Brian, this is your cousin?" "She looks so rustic," a female classmate sitting next to Diana sneered. Brian's ears turned red, and he glanced at me with dissatisfaction. He explained, "She grew up in the countryside. She's uneducated and knows nothing. Of course, she looks rustic. Don't mind her. But she stinks fishy smell. I heard that country folks don't bathe for a long time. Is that true?" Diana pinched her nose. Everyone looked disgusted. Brian quickly pushed me out in panic. "Ellie, go back quickly. Don't embarrass yourself here." From beginning to end, he didn't say a word in my defense. I couldn't bear the humiliation and left in tears. In this life, he still treated me like a fool, but I wouldn't tolerate it. I slapped his hand and turned to leave, but he grabbed me. "Ellie, didn't you hear me? I'm treating my classmates to dinner today and don't have enough money. Can you lend me some?"
Borrow.
In my past life, he always said the money I gave him was a loan and he'd repay me double once he succeeded, but until the day I died, he only gave me a hasty funeral with the cheapest coffin and buried me randomly in the village. He used the remaining money and my compensation to marry Diana. Remembering this, my heart ached again. I shook off his hand and said coldly, "Brian, you can borrow money if you want, but you have to pay back everything I gave you before." Brian froze, confused. "Ellie, what do you mean? Didn't we agree that you'd support my studies and I'd repay you later?" "Yes, you said it was for your studies, but what are you doing with my money now?" Brian pursed his lips, embarrassed. It was Diana's birthday. I invited her to dinner. She's the magistrate's daughter, and I try to please her. The same words from my previous life. I interrupted him, annoyed. "Wouldn't it be better if you just dated her directly? Here's the deal, our engagement is cancelled. Pay me back the money, and go please her all you want." Brian's eyes flashed with panic. He reached out to grab me. "Ellie, it's not what you think. She and I are just friends." Just then, a female voice came from behind. "Brian, who are you talking to?" He immediately shook off my hand and turned to explain to Diana, who had just arrived. "My cousin." I happened to run into her and chatted a bit. I sneered in my heart. I had been stupid in my last life, but now I saw things clearly. Brian didn't want to admit our relationship because he was afraid Diana would misunderstand. Diana frowned at my appearance. "How could you have such a poor cousin?" Brian replied, "She's a country girl. Rarely comes to the city. Of course, she can't compare with you. I was tired of watching him put on a show, so I turned to leave. Country people are so rude. Don't even say hello. Brian, your relatives have poor upbringing. Diana mocked behind my back. Brian immediately pulled me back and ordered, Ellie, say hello to Diana. Don't make it seem like our family is uneducated. I smiled innocently and replied, our Brian family has been farming for generations. What kind of education do we need? Can it make a living? Cousin, did you forget how you carried manure after studying for a few years? Diana immediately looked at Brian in disgust. His face turned red with anger. Ellie, what nonsense are you talking about? I'm telling the truth. You carried manure, plowed land, harvested grain, fed pigs and cows. People in the village said you were a farm work expert. It's a pity you went to school. Might as well go back to farming. Seeing Diana's eyes grow more disgusted, Brian pushed me again. Go back quickly. Don't talk nonsense in front of Diana. I walked out. She hit her head as a child. Her brain isn't right. She likes to talk nonsense. Don't listen to her. Listening to Brian's explanation behind me, I smiled sarcastically. In order to save his image in front of Diana, he unscrupulously slandered his fiancé, who supported him. It was so shameless. I walked out quickly. I took the money I earned from selling fish to the noodle stall and ate the noodles I had wanted in my previous life. I even added eggs I hadn't eaten in a long time. They were fragrant and delicious. From now on, I'll eat many eggs and never treat myself badly again. I am a temporary worker in the factory and don't have a dormitory assigned to me, so I have to return to the village every time I go to or get off work. In the past, to save money, I would walk back. It took several hours round trip. This time, I got on the ox cart without hesitation. When I returned home, I saw my mother waiting for me and almost cried. In my previous life, I was my mother's only relative. After she learned about my death, she drank pesticide and committed suicide on the spot. Brian took all my money as a matter of course, yet he was reluctant to even buy a coffin for my mother. In the end, it was the kind villagers who made a coffin for her. Seeing my red eyes, my mother immediately asked cautiously, who bullied my daughter? I wiped my tears and said aggrievedly, Mom, I don't want to marry Brian anymore. I want to cancel the engagement. What's wrong? Did Brian bully you? My mother looked surprised. I nodded. Brian used the money our family earned to have affairs in the city. Mom, he's a beast. My mother shouted. What? You work so hard to support him, and he dares to mess around outside? This engagement must be cancelled. I'll go with you in 2 days to break it off and get the money back. Also, Mom, I've decided I want to study. The teacher said knowledge can change fate. Only by changing my fate can our lives get better. It's useless to rely on others. Although my grades aren't as good as Brian's, and I didn't get into No. 1 middle school, I can still get into No. 2. I'll work hard and get into a good university. As soon as I finished, my mother nodded. My daughter, whatever you want to do, I'll support you. I looked at her and couldn't hold back my tears anymore. I hugged her and cried, Thank you, Mom. The next day, I went to the factory to resign, but saw Brian waiting at the door. He didn't explain what happened yesterday. Instead, he stretched out his hand and asked me for money. Ellie, I used up all my money yesterday, and I really have nothing to eat. Can you give me some? I rolled my eyes and sneered. No money. Not only that, I won't give you a single penny from now on. Ellie, why are you so angry? I just treated my classmates to a meal. Why are you being so petty? Hearing this, Brian frowned and scolded me. You're so magnanimous that you use a girl's hard-earned money from farming to treat guests? If you're so capable, why not earn money yourself? You eat sumptuous fish and meat in big restaurants while my mother and I are reluctant to even eat an egg just because eggs can be sold for few more cents. Yesterday's meat was delicious, wasn't it? My family hasn't had meat in months, did you know that? I shouted. Brian looked embarrassed, then softened his tone. I'm sorry, Ellie, I know it's not easy for you to earn money. Didn't I buy you something to make up for it? He handed me a pair of shoes. When I saw them, my heart ached again. In my previous life, Brian also gave me this same pair of shoes. I wore them for a long time like a treasure until Diana saw them and sneered. Aren't these the shoes I threw away? Brian gave them to you? He said his cousin was poor and couldn't afford shoes. That cousin is you. I still remember the shame and heartbreak. I had cherished that gift so much. Seeing those shoes again now, I was filled with grief and anger. I raised my hand and slapped them to the ground. I don't want your things. I just want to cancel the engagement. Brian's hand froze midair. He looked hurt. Ellie, don't say that. We grew up together and agreed to be together forever. I regret it. Brian, a scumbag like you doesn't deserve to be with me. Ellie, don't go too far. I'll be a college student soon, and that's more than enough to marry a country girl like you. Don't go too far? Brian shouted. Yo, the young couple is arguing at the factory gate. An auntie passing by said curiously, Aunt, don't talk nonsense. I have nothing to do with him anymore. I rolled my eyes. The aunt looked surprised. Yo, I heard Comrade shout Brian is a good student and will be a college student. How can you bear to give him up? Auntie, you've seen Ellie's bad temper. Only I can tolerate her. If she leaves me, where will she find another good man like me? Brian added smugly. I sneered, raising my voice. Some people rely on women to study and have no backbone at all. What can they use to support me? I think people can only rely on themselves. Auntie, your man uses your factory wages to gamble, right? TSK. Is that reliable? My words made both their faces blush. This aunt had bullied me because I was a part-time worker. Now that I had resigned, I didn't need to put up with her anymore. After throwing out those sarcastic words, I turned and went to the factory. I submitted my resignation casually and returned to the village. But I didn't expect that Brian, having lost the argument, ran to complain to his grandmother. He's an orphan, raised by his grandmother since childhood, and Grandma Brian is a famous scoundrel in the village. As soon as she sat down at our door, she started wailing, Oh, this girl from the Ellie family was engaged to my grandson, but now she's cheating with other men and wants to dump him. Is that acceptable? What kind of decent girl acts like that? My poor Brian, his love was wasted. Her crying attracted all the villagers around. They heard Grandma Brian's slander against me, and they looked at me with contempt. They all started pointing fingers at me. I can't believe that Ellie is so shameless. I used to say that she worked hard in the county every day, but it turns out she was cheating with men. Look at her foxy appearance. How can she be a good girl? Brian, such an honest child, will definitely not be able to beat her. TSK. This kind of woman who is corrupting social customs should be thrown into the pond. When my mother heard their scolding, she was so anxious that she was about to cry. She wanted to rush forward to argue with them, but I stopped her. I looked calm and composed as I slowly walked to Grandma Brian's side, squatted down, and whispered in her ear. Grandma Brian, I saw with my own eyes that Brian was dating the county magistrate's daughter. It would be better for him to marry her than to marry me. When he gets married, you'll be taken to the city to live in a big house. What do you think about this marriage? Do you want to cancel it or not? If you don't, I will tell the magistrate's daughter that Brian already has a fiancé. Upon hearing this, Grandma Brian immediately jumped up from the ground, took my hand, and asked, Are you telling the truth? I nodded. Of course. Cancel it. You must cancel it. I will go in with you now and press your fingerprints. When the people around saw this scene, they were all stunned. Grandma Brian immediately explained, Folks, this is all a misunderstanding, just a misunderstanding. Ellie and Brian broke up because their personalities weren't compatible. I was just talking nonsense. Amid the speechless gazes of the crowd, Grandma Brian came into the house, and I wrote a letter of cancellation of engagement. She was illiterate, so she pressed her fingerprints without even looking at it. She didn't know the letter not only stated the engagement was canceled, but that Brian also had to return all the money I had given him before. Grandma Brian left in a rage. Sure enough, Brian came to the door the next day. I looked at him, curled my lips, and smiled. You came at the right time. I want to give you something. Seeing that I was no longer tense like yesterday, he breathed a sigh of relief, smiled, and walked in. Ellie, I know you were just angry with me for a while. You must be over it now, right? He thought that after Grandma Brian's scene, I would swallow my grievances and continue to live with him. What a pity. He trusted the wrong person and misjudged me. I looked at him without saying a word. He thought I agreed, then said, "Okay, let's not talk about the past. This month is almost over. You should give me the living expenses, right?" Hearing this, I opened the drawer under his hopeful gaze, took out a piece of paper, and handed it to him. "What is this?" "A letter of withdrawal of engagement." I smiled and replied, "Yes. Your grandma has already put her fingerprints on it. You have to do what it says." "How is it possible? Didn't she come to ruin your reputation yesterday and force you to suffer in silence and continue to be with me, right?" Brian's expression froze. I immediately explained, "No, Brian. I wanted her to persuade you. That's all. I really don't want to separate from you." I no longer had patience for his hypocrisy and asked in a cold voice, "Brian, you already have Diana. Why are you still pestering me?" Brian looked at me and suddenly revealed a look of understanding. He defended himself helplessly. "So it was because of Diana that you wanted to cancel the engagement? Didn't I tell you she and I are just good friends? She has a good family background and will be able to help us more in the future. Why are you so stubborn and can't figure it out?" I snorted coldly. "You know what your relationship is. I'm too lazy to argue with you. Anyway, it's useless to say anything now. The engagement is cancelled. You should pay back the money as soon as possible. Otherwise, I will call the police and see how you can still go to college." I threatened in a cold voice. Brian's face became more and more ugly. He tore the cancellation letter into pieces. I looked at the fragments on the ground and said indifferently, "It's okay, there are 2 copies. I still have one even if you tear this one up." Brian stared at me and roared in a low voice, "Ellie, what should I do for you to believe moonless you die?" I looked at him indifferently and uttered these 4 words slowly. Brian's face turned completely black. He stood up suddenly and pointed at me with a trembling hand. "Okay, Ellie, don't regret leaving me. Don't worry, leaving you is the most correct decision in my life. I will never regret it. I'm waiting for the day when you come to beg me." He said this angrily and then rushed out the door. I rolled my eyes at his words. In the previous life, he and I inevitably had quarrels, but Brian always treated me with cold violence, waiting for me to bow my head and beg him to reconcile. And I was indeed blinded by the so-called love, and every time I took the initiative to find him and make peace, I was like this, making him think that I couldn't live without him, so he made such a ridiculous assertion just now. Unfortunately, I have seen everything clearly after my rebirth. There is no way I can turn back in this life. After resolving my marriage with him, I could finally devote myself to studying. On the same day, I went to find my junior high school teacher and asked him to take me to No. 2 middle school. At his and my request, the principal of No. 2 middle school agreed to accept me on a provisional basis and see my performance before deciding on official enrollment. I studied 1 year less than others, so my foundation was weaker and I had to work harder than average. In the morning, others got up at 6 to study. I got up at 5. At night, others studied until 10. I studied until 12. I almost tried my best to cram knowledge into my brain. In this way, I studied day and night for half a year before I caught up with my classmates. The teacher was moved by my efforts and, after discussing with the principal, agreed to keep me. In the past 6 months, I never met Brian. It was not until the new semester began that I saw him again in the street. At the market, he and Diana were picking the first flowers at a stall. Diana picked a flower, looked at Brian, and asked him to pay. Brian's eyes darkened, and he took out a wrinkled 3 cents from his pocket and handed it to the stall owner. I could see the embarrassment in his eyes as he paid. In the past, I had covered for him, so he could spend any money to please Diana. Now, he has paid me back so much money, almost emptying Grandma Brian's family fortune. But in his previous life, even if he was not living in financial difficulty, he never bought me anything except the pair of shoes given by Diana. You've treated me like a treasure and patched my clothes for 2 years. Now, even though he has trouble eating, he still has to put on a brave face to buy a hair flower for Diana. This kind of pampering makes me feel sad about my own stupidity and worthlessness in my previous life. I blinked and just wanted to turn around and walk away from them when Brian's eyes met mine. I immediately lowered my head and walked in the opposite direction, but before I took a few steps, my arm was grabbed by him. "Ellie, don't go." I frowned. shook off his hand, turned my head and asked impatiently, "Brian, what do you want to do? Where have you been these days? I couldn't find you at your house, and I went to the factory to look for you, but they said you resigned. Why are you looking for me? We have broken off our engagement, but we grew up together. We are still friends even if we broke off our engagement, right? Can't I care about you a little?" I rubbed my arms and sneered. "Stop pretending. Brian, why are you running so fast?" Diana's complaining tone sounded from behind him. When she saw me, she smiled mockingly. "So you are the ex-fiancé." I was a little surprised. "You actually told her about this?" Brian's expression was a little awkward for a moment. Diana put her slender white hand on his arm, looking completely justified. I can understand why Brian lied to me before. No one would be able to show off a fiancé like you were and rustic. Fortunately, he has dumped you now. Without you as a burden, Brian's future will definitely be bright. Burden? Who is a burden to whom? I sneered. "Brian, you didn't tell the whole truth." Brian's eyes flashed with a trace of guilt. He stared at me and stopped me, saying, "Ellie, don't talk nonsense." Diana obviously believed Brian, so she didn't take my sarcasm to heart, but looked me up and down. She saw that my clothes were no longer rustic. There was a small flower on the hair rope for my pigtail, and because I didn't work, my skin was whiter, and my beautiful face was gradually revealed. "Brian, I see her like this. She couldn't have been deceived by that wild man, right? A wild girl like her with no knowledge. Those bad men say a few nice words, give her some benefits, and she'll probably run away with someone else." Hearing this, Brian also frowned and looked at me, accusing me. "Ellie, is what Diana said true? I saw you never dressed up before. Why do you look like this now?" Seeing that they were all suspicious in that direction, I sneered. "Brian, don't worry. I won't be easily deceived by a man after seeing someone like you. Besides, do I have to rely on men to live a good life? The money I earned for you over the years is enough for me to use. I knew you would spend the money at will. Ellie, why are you such a spendthrift?" If this money was given to me, when Brian heard me mention the money, he suddenly became furious and began to accuse me, as if the money was given to me by him. "What? You shameless thing. You've broken off the engagement, but still want to blackmail Brian for money? Pay it back quickly, or I'll go to the police and report you for cheating." Anran immediately thought of something wrong after hearing what Brian said, pointed at me, and cursed. I rolled my eyes. "That money's mine. The money I paid to support Brian over the years is clearly written in black and white. It's useless to call the police." "What nonsense are you talking about? Does Brian need you to support him? How can you, a country girl who knows nothing, make any money?" Brian's expression became more and more guilty. "Diana, let's go. Consider this money as my compensation to her for all these years. I won't bother with her." "Classmate Ellie, are you going to school today?" A classmate suddenly called me from behind. His address stunned both Brian and Anran. Brian looked at me in surprise and said, "Classmate Ellie? Ellie, are you in school? You haven't studied for a year. How can there be a high school that wants you? Are you kidding?" After hearing what Brian said, the classmate instantly showed an unhappy expression. "Hey, what you said is too ridiculous. Classmate Ellie studies very hard. The teachers and the principal like her very much. Why can't she study?" Hearing this, Brian looked at me with more and more surprise, but I was too lazy to argue with him. I turned around and left with that classmate. Ignore them. Two psychopaths. But I didn't expect that after that day, Brian would find me again. He was standing at the school gate. When he saw me, his eyes lit up. He walked toward me with a smile, as if nothing had happened, and wanted to take the school bag from my hand. I immediately turned around to avoid his hand and said impatiently, "Why are you here again? Didn't I tell you not to bother me?" "Ellie, so you have really been studying during this period? Why didn't you tell me earlier? We can work hard together and take the college entrance examination together. In this way, no one will say that you are not worthy of me." In the previous life, Brian's attitude was completely different. After the high school entrance examination, his grades were higher than mine, so he advised me not to study anymore and to make money to support his studies. After he was admitted to a key university and became successful, he promised he would take me to live a good life. He kept persuading me, telling me that women don't have to be so powerful. I could rely on him for the rest of my life after he worked hard for a few years. The relationship between childhood sweethearts made me believe his words wrongly and even sacrifice my life for him. In the end, I used the money I earned from working hard to help him marry his new love. Now, he sees that I am not so easy to talk to, so he changes his rhetoric and wants to work hard with me. But I know that although he's talking nicely now, he will eventually treat me as his stepping stone. Thinking of this, I pushed him and shouted at him. Who wants you to help me? I can do it on my own. You haven't studied for a long time. How much do you know? My gratis and no. One middle school are pretty good now, so I am more than capable of tutoring you. Hearing this, he sneered and said sarcastically, Don't be so self-righteous. Who needs you to tutor? Get as far away as you can. Ellie, don't be ungrateful. I'm willing to sacrifice my precious study time to tutor you. Don't you cherish it? I kicked him hard on the calf and cursed. Get out of here. Brian jumped in pain. Ellie, you are a shrew. I didn't want to get entangled with him too much, so I ran away. Maybe I completely hurt his self-esteem that day. Brian didn't come to me again. I studied peacefully in school and was actually in the top 100 in the grade in the midterm exam. When it comes to studying, I'm not that stupid. In addition, after my rebirth, my brain had become much smarter than in my previous life, and studying had become much easier. But I didn't slack off because of this. I still spent more time studying than ordinary people. I thought my life would continue like this, that I had to live according to routine until the college entrance examination, but fate would eventually tie me back to the entanglements of my past life. This weekend, Brian suddenly came to my house with a large stack of books on his back. Ellie, this is my textbook from the first year of high school. The notes are very detailed. I'll give them to you now. His attitude was as if what happened that day had never happened. This made me a little confused. I frowned and asked, What do you want to do? I don't want to do anything, Ellie. I just want to help you, Brian said with a sincere face. I sneered, waved my hand, swept the books he handed me to the ground, and said disdainfully, I don't care, so don't pretend to be a good person. Ellie, I'm sincere, Brian said, showing a hurt expression. Brian, you're out of money, right? I said sarcastically. Brian's body stiffened, and he argued stiffly. No. Why would I use your money? Ellie, I really want to make peace with you. But I had known for a long time he just needed money. A few days ago, when I was helping my mother with farm work, I accidentally saw Grandma Brian, already old, still hunched over in the fields. Seeing my puzzled look, my mother hesitated and explained, I heard that Brian has spent a lot of money recently. He doesn't make money by studying, and Grandma Brian gave him all her retirement savings. Now, she has to do more farm work. I nodded in understanding, guessing Brian probably spent it all on Diana. I heard the last tailor shop incident didn't break them up, but Brian must have spent a lot to coax her. Without me, he could only rely on his family. In both his past and present life, Brian was a loser who relied on others. But Grandma Brian definitely didn't know the truth, so I deliberately released this news. I believed, with her character, she wouldn't be willing to spend so much money on a girl who wasn't even married into the family. In a few days, she would definitely go to the city to find Diana and cause a scene. So at that moment, I looked at Brian and sneered, Brian, if you want to climb up the social ladder, you have to rely on yourself. Brian shook his head and looked at me sincerely. Ellie, I'm really ready to break up with Diana. I can't afford a girl like her. I've thought it through. We're both from rural areas. You're thrifty and virtuous. You were good to me. You're the right person to marry. Brian, you only came back after bleeding dry. Don't you think it's too late? I'm not your blood supply station. If I marry you, I'll be unlucky for the rest of my life. Get out. I feel unlucky staying with you one more second. Ellie, don't say that. I won't spend another penny of your money. Let's study together and make progress together, okay?
Bang.
I slammed the door shut. In this life, my heart had long been as hard as steel. No matter what Brian did, I would never forgive him. As I expected, Brian didn't have time to bother me anymore. Grandma Brian really went to the county town to find Diana and made a big scene. She grabbed Diana at the gate of one middle school and started crying. When will you marry our Brian, you old lady? What nonsense are you talking about? Diana asked in horror. You and our Brian have been together for more than half a year. My Brian even used up all my pension money for you. Who else can you marry if not him? Grandma Brian cried and made the situation worse, spreading rumors in front of many people that Diana and Brian had slept together. Diana's reputation was instantly ruined. Almost everyone in know. One middle school knew she had devoted herself to Brian and assumed they would get married. The matter soon reached County Magistrate Henry, and he was furious. Brian was just a poor rural boy, a high school student with no background. He couldn't even afford a wedding gift. How could County Magistrate Henry allow his daughter to marry him? But Diana still had feelings for Brian, and his recent coldness made her even more unwilling to let go. She wanted to use public opinion to marry him. I thought they were really going to get married, but unexpectedly, something happened. Half a year later, Brian's right hand was smashed by a gangster and became permanently disabled. He was supposed to take the college entrance exam in a few months, but lost the ability to do so. Seeing Brian in such a pitiful state, Diana started to dislike him and gave up on marrying him. She secretly agreed to her father's arrangement, packed up, and left the county town to seek refuge with relatives in another province. Brian was completely abandoned, but I could guess that the attack was arranged by County Magistrate Henry. The Brian family had ruined his daughter's reputation and still wanted to cling to them. How could he let that happen? But striking back immediately would have been too obvious, so he waited half a year, pretending to agree to the marriage, then destroyed Brian at the final turning point. County Magistrate Henry was never a good man. He raised his daughter to be arrogant and domineering. How could he be a decent father? He had some power and did whatever he wanted in that small county. So Brian never found out who his attacker was, and even the police handled the case hastily. Brian suffered a heavy blow and returned to the countryside, never recovering. 1 year later, I successfully passed the entrance exam to a top university in Beijing and brought my mother to live in the city. She couldn't sit still, so she set up a stall in Beijing to sell snacks. I would also work-study during my spare time. Life in Beijing was pretty smooth. Before the Chinese New Year, I went back to the village with her to worship our ancestors. When Brian learned that I was back, he came to my house again. Ellie, you're back. I heard that you passed the entrance exam to a top university. Congratulations. When he saw me, he forced a smile and congratulated me. He was now thin and dark. Although he was clearly less than 20 years old, he looked like a 50-year-old grandfather. I showed a look of disgust and looked at him with disdain. Brian, what else do you want to do? Seeing this, he immediately knelt down and begged. In the past 2 years since you left, I have been recalling your kindness every day. Over the years, you have worked hard to make money, but never complained to me. You were always worried about whether I had enough food to eat and whether I had enough money to spend. In this world, you are the only one who treats me so well. I was a little surprised after listening to Brian's words. It turned out that he had always seen my efforts, but my heart was not touched by his repentance. In the last life, I gave everything for him without any regrets. So until I died, he thought that everything I did for him was taken for granted. Therefore, he could take my compensation and marry Diana without hesitation. In this life, I saw his true character. After I refused to give for him, he saw my good side and came to me to confess. But belated affection is cheaper than grass. It's too late. Brian, I feel sick when I see you now, so how can I be good to you? I looked down at him and sneered. Brian grabbed my hand with an apologetic face. Ellie, just give me another chance. I will treat you well. Take me to Beijing, and I will go to Beijing to work to support you to go to college, okay? Brian, how much money can you make now? What's more, I have hands and feet. Do I need you to support me? I am different from people like you who have been living off others all your life. Ellie, I want to make it up to you. I know I have done too many things. I have let you down. Please give me one more chance now. I have completely repented. For the rest of my life, I will treat you well and will never have two hearts. As he said this, he moved his knees and crawled in front of me, trying to grab my hand, but his right hand grabbed nothing. His body trembled, and tears fell to the ground one after another, leaving watermarks all over the floor. I looked at the emptiness in front of his wrist and sighed. Brian, I don't even look down on people like you. This sentence was like a sharp sword that shattered his dignity. He was shaking violently. Ellie. Hey, Brian should have some self-awareness, right? And I can't go back anymore. As soon as I finished speaking, I closed the door neatly, isolating his grief and despair directly outside the door. Until a few days later, I received the news of Brian and Diana's death. It turned out that Brian also guessed that it was County Chief Henry who made his hand disabled, but he never found a suitable opportunity to take revenge. Maybe my words yesterday completely stimulated him. He actually sneaked into County Chief Henry's house in the middle of the night and killed him and Diana like crazy. After returning to the village, he knew that he could not escape the law. She committed suicide by drinking pesticide at home. Grandma Brian died last year. No one came to collect her body. The villagers also hated the murderer Brian, so they hastily dumped his body on a barren hill. No one cared about it anymore. But someone found a letter to me in his home. The handwriting on the letter was crooked, with only a few words. Ellie, I'm sorry for you, both in my past and present lives. It turned out that Brian knew what happened in his past life before he died. But so what? The mistake had been made. No matter what, there was no way to make up for it. I threw the letter into the brazier and burned it to ashes along with a painful past. Everything has a turnaround, and everything will be sweet in the end. I believe that there will be countless opportunities in my future.